Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage and we're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday. And today we're talking about T3 medication and timing of taking your T3 medication if you are going to get a thyroid panel drawn. Now, ultimately, whoever's prescribing your medication should be telling you when to take your medication in relation to the blood draw. I don't prescribe medication, but when I'm running a thyroid panel on somebody, I'm often telling them not to take their thyroid medication in the 24 hours prior to the blood draw. Why is that? Because I want to actually see where their T3 is naturally, okay? T4, the half-life of T4 is about 7 days. So if you don't want to see what the impact of the medication you're taking, you really need to wait longer than 7 days because that T4 medication is going to stay in your body about 7 days. Half of it will stay in there about 7 days. So usually what I tell people who are taking T4 medication is just don't take it the day before, and then we'll know that the T4 dose that they're taking is causing their T4 and free T4 to be where it's at, and its impact on T3 and reverse T3 and the rest of the panel. So for T4, I just say don't take it for the 24 hours prior. If somebody's taking T3, I would say the same thing. I don't want to necessarily see you on T3. I don't prescribe T3. I don't prescribe any medication. But I don't want to see where your manipulated value of T3 is with medication. I want to see who you are without the T3 medication. I want to see what your body's able to do with how much T3 you actually have in the system, and then what the body's able to do with the medication you're taking, T4 medication. How well is it able to convert T4 to T3? Because ultimately, what we should have in a state of true hypothyroidism, where there's just not enough thyroid hormone in the system, we should have a really high level of free T3 to free T4, because as fast as the cells can get T4, they're going to convert it to T3. In a kind of homeostatic state where we have the appropriate amount of thyroid hormone T4 in the system, then we should have a kind of an optimal level of T4 to T3 conversion, and we look at that free T3 to free T4 ratio. It should be somewhere 0.31 to 0.34 picomoles per liter. And if we have a an over-medicated state, oftentimes what we'll see is a lower free T3 to free T4 ratio. Or if we have an immune inflammatory cell stress process going on, we'll see a low free T3 to free T4 ratio. But getting back to the question at hand, when should you take your T3 medication? I've kind of given you my opinion. I don't like anybody to take it in the 24 hours prior, but your prescribing doctor should tell you when to take it, and they may have a specific timing that's important to them. So when should you take it? It depends on what you're trying to determine. If they're trying to determine how high your T3 rises, then they may want to test your thyroid panel somewhere in that 4 to 5 to 6 hour range post T3 medication being taken. Why? Because the peak time for the T3 you're taking to fully get into the bloodstream is about 4 hours. So if somebody says, I want your T3 level to be between 4 and 5, 3 and 4, whatever that number is that they want it to be in between as a max, then you're probably going to want to test that. They're probably going to want to test your thyroid panel around 4 hours after the dose is taken, because they want to see how high it goes, okay? The dose that you take an hour, if you take your labs an hour after taking your T3 medication, you haven't fully absorbed all the T3. It's going to take about 4 hours to get that full absorption into the bloodstream. So you may measure that an hour after you take your dose and you may feel good, but at 4 hours afterwards, you may actually feel a bit hyperthyroid because the level of T3 in the system is even higher, okay? So it really depends on what time you want to take it. So within minutes of taking your T3 medication, you're going to start to see a rise in serum total T3 and free T3. The peak total T3, free T3 will be about 4 hours after the dose, okay? And then you'll have a return to baseline in about 20 hours. So if you don't take your T3 medication 20 to 24 hours before your blood draw, essentially we're measuring what your body is actually able to generate on its own, okay? Now remember, the thyroid gland doesn't make most of the T3. Maybe makes 5 or 10 micrograms when you have a healthy gland. Maybe a little bit more if there's reduced peripheral conversion. But in general, that's about what a healthy thyroid gland makes. If you have hypothyroidism, then your T3 is likely going to maybe be a little bit lower, but your T3 output from the gland might be a little bit lower because of the damage to the gland. But most of the T3 in circulation is converted into peripheral tissues via what we call the deiodinases. Those are the enzymes that convert T4 to T3 inside the tissues. And then that T3 is potentially used depending on which deiodinase it is, and then it goes back out into the bloodstream. So we have deiodinase 1, we have deiodinase 2. These are the two primary enzymes that convert T4 to T3, and they produce most of the circulating T3 in the bloodstream. The max influence that T3 medication is going to have on that TSH is about 5 hours. So as you take your T3 dose, your T3 levels are going to go up in the bloodstream over the next 4-ish hours. And as the T3 and free T3 are going up, TSH is going to start being suppressed. And so you're going to have your lowest level of TSH somewhere around 5 hours. And then as the T3 dose continues to decline over the remaining 16 hours, TSH is going to start to go back up again. So what we have to keep in mind is, what are you trying to determine? Or is somebody trying to figure out, have they given you enough T3 medication to hit their predetermined sweet spot of what they think total T3 and free T3 should be? Then you might want to be measuring or having your blood drawn for your thyroid panel somewhere around 4 or 5 hours post taking your dose. If somebody wants to see how well you're converting T4 into T3 naturally, then you probably don't want to take that thyroid medication before a blood draw. So maybe 20 to 24 hours before the blood draw. If somebody wants to see how much T3 influences TSH, then again, you're looking at about 5 hours you want to take it post blood draw. So it really does determine who's ordering the labs and what they're trying to determine. But in general, if somebody's asking me for help, I don't want somebody to take their thyroid medications for the 24 hours leading up to the blood draw, the thyroid panel blood draw, because I want to see either how much thyroid hormone is being made by the thyroid gland and how it's converting at the tissue level, or I want to see how the thyroid medication they're taking, the T4 medication, is impacting their thyroid panel and the tissue levels. I want to see how good a job they're doing taking the T4 and converting it to T3, because that's going to influence what we do to help them. But always discuss that with your prescribing doc. If they say, hey, just take it like an hour, just take it and then within an hour go get your blood draw. Remember, if you feel good at that dose, but then at times you feel hyper, the dose at an hour, the level of T3 or free T3 in the bloodstream an hour after the blood draw is going to be less than you're going to be 4 to 5 hours after the blood draw. And then 8 or 10 hours after the blood draw, you're going to be at a different level of T3. And then 20 to 24 hours, you're going to be at a different level of T3. So that T3 level goes up and then it declines over the 24 hours a period of time. So what does your doctor want to measure? That's the important thing. So ask your prescribing doc who's prescribing that T3, exactly when do you want me to do my blood draw in relation to when I took the thyroid medication, specifically the T3, and what are you actually trying to establish? All right, if you have any questions, put them below wherever you watch the video.